So last week we spoke about the yichud between the Shem Havaya and the Shem Adnes. That the Shem Havaya represents potential, represents the force that's giving us life, and the Shem Adnes represents the Shechina, which is receiving life. And the combination of the two, meaning when a person has a perception of what he's trying to combine, and he combines the two, that causes a yichud. So it says, "V'zeh inyan Shema Yisrael Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Leilam Vod." Shema Yichud Havaya Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Leilam Vod Midas HaMalchus VaAdnes. So Shema Yisrael is the pasuk of yichud, right? That's ultimately what the Torah is trying to accomplish within each one of us and together as a nation. There should be achdus. First within each one of us, that all the different parts of us should be misyached into one being. And then also as a nation, as a people, and the entire globe, that there should be unity, there should be achdus. Reb Tzodok says that the nature of Matan Torah, what happened at that event, was not a nace in the sense that we usually think, but it was actually a spiritual nature. And what's a spiritual nature? That because we had Vayichan Sham Yisrael Neged Dahar, you had 600,000 Jews together, so when that happens, naturally, the collective being that's within those hearts is going to present itself, is going to make an appearance. And that's how Matan Torah works. So Matan Torah is the nature of 600,000 people of Klal Yisrael, when Klal Yisrael comes together, and they have one united heart, like the Medrash says, the Mat Tomer Zeh, the Klal Yisrael is nimshel Tomer, Mat Tomer Zeh in lelev echad, af Yisrael elim in lelev echad, lavim shebashamayim. So when the heart's united between all 600,000 of us, so then our collective consciousness, our collective being will appear to us and teach us who we are and tell us what we need to do from there. The same happens for the individual, that when an individual is completely united, when he brings together all the different facets of his heart, when all the different ruchos that reside within him can come to the same conclusion, then he gains the deeper perspective of what it means to be him. So just like in the individual, so the same way in the collective, that when we come together as one heart, we have an appearance. So when Yakov met with Yosef, what he did, the first thing is reach Shema Yisrael, to be miyached, even that very high, very lofty emotion that he was feeling at that moment should become all part of the yichud, because within that yichud, everything that we're miyached has a kiyum. It's tzrira b'tzrira chayim. The things that we're not miyached, the things that reside within the olam hapirid, they can't last because they don't have where to hold on to. They're not part of what we're creating for the future. And Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Leilam Vod is how we bring that light down into the Shechina. So Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that's our potential. That's where we're heading to. That's the Shem Havaya that we're trying to bring out. And Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Leilam Vod is what we're working with now. That we don't recognize the Yichud, but we recognize that the Yichud is in charge of the whole Malchus. The Yichud is in charge of everything that's happening, and it's leading it so that eventually the Yichud can manifest. If you want to see a beautiful Rosh Tevis, if you look at it, you can mamish notice that it was intentional. So Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Leilam Vod, you take every second word and you take the first letter. So from Baruch you take the Bais, and from the Kovod you take the Chof, and from the Olam you take the Lamed, and that would make Bakoil. Then you take every second one, the Shin from Shem, the Mem from Malchusay, and the Vov from Vod, Shemoy. So he's telling you Bakoil, Shemoy. Within everything is his name, meaning nothing exists outside of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if you want to get a little bit closer to yourself and realize how deeply he goes when we say Bakol Shemoy, let's look at the Sefer Tevis, but backwards. So the Dalet from Void, the Mem from Lo'ilam, the Vav from Malchusoy, that spells Domoy. And the Dalet from Kovod, the Mem from Shem, and the Kaf from Baruch, that spells Damcha. Damoy, Damcha. His blood is your blood, because the intelligence in your blood that has the ability to think, that belongs to him. That's his intelligence. And that's the Koach HaMachshava. The koach hamachshava existed before life. The koach hamachshava created life, because the koach hamachshava is the force, the intelligence, that has the ability to manifest al pi chochma. And that machshava, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was matzil for each one of us so that we can think with the same machshava that he thought when he created the world. We have a little piece of his seichel, of his ability to think, and that's the same koach hamachshava, the same creative force that originally created the universe is the same creative force that's creating us. So we can say it in a closer way when you're thinking about yourself as an individual, not on the universal level. So you would say the same thought that came into your father's mind before you were conceived is the thought that was then natsal and lives inside of you and allows you to think. It's the same force, it's the same koyach. And that koyach is the creative force that lives in your blood. And by Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Olam Vod, they're telling us, Bakol Shmoy, and everything is his name, and Domoy Domcha, his blood is your blood. And that's how you have the ability, you have the power to manifest in this world. V'hainu, ki be'emes havaya echad b'iyichud gomer gam achshav, k'mo she'omri atu at shenivro elam v'ati mishenivro elam. So we say atu at shenivro elam, ati mishenivro elam, we're saying that there is no change. Atahu, you're the exact same. Because we spoke about last week that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created life, he already saw Magid Mereshus Achris, he created time and he created everything that will happen within time at the same time. But we experience it in time. Our ability to experience what he created depends on time, so we experience a moment at a time. But for him, it's all there at once. So legabe him, it's ati achin nivro elam, ati mishin nivro elam, it's the same perception for him. He knew that at this time he was going to create whatever he was going to create, and it's going to continue for a certain amount of time, and this is the result of its continuance. So in him there was no change. Therefore, the yichud, legabe him, is still exactly the same as it was before he created life. Nothing changed in his essence. But legabe us, it's different. So even though there's brias, right, there's creation, שאין הבריאה חולצם כלום באמיתיס יחידוי, ואין חלק החיים הנגלה בו אלא מצמצומים ומגבולים נפרודים ממקור החיים הנצחיים, בלתי בעל גבול. So even though you see creation, you see creatures, so you think, oh, how can there be a creature if the creator is completely united? How can there be a separate being within that creation? And the answer is that legabe him, it's not a separate being. It's only legabe the being. His experience feels separate because of his perception. But legabe HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving all of that life, there's no separation, there's no separateness, there's complete unity. ורק לפי כוח המקבלים, שאינם יכולים לקבל כפי תוקף ההשגה, they have to feel that they are separate. ורוצה השם יזברך להיות מלך בעם ויהיו מקבלים ומשפיעים. He wanted to have that relationship, he wanted to create this separation, he wanted to create these possibilities. So legabe HaKadosh Baruch Hu's greatness, even though in our mind we think that a unity is more united when there is no separate beings, when there's no parts to it. But legabe HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's no difference whether there are parts or there's no parts. He's beyond that. His unity is beyond being separated. It doesn't even have the possibility of being separated. It's a nimna for the yichud of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be separated into pieces. So regardless of what he creates, the creation that he created, it doesn't change anything regarding his essence. And regarding his perception of it, he already knew what it was going to be before it was, and therefore it was already mushrash in his essence, like it says that before he created the world, they were alone, him and his name, and they were keshalheves keshura begacheles, like a flame that's tied into a gacheles, it's tied into a coal, meaning he doesn't have a name, right? Because the definition of a name means that you have the ability for somebody else to perceive you. That's what a name is for. But even without having his name, he had presence, he had existence, he had reality. So when he created, now we're looking for him. We're looking for the one that was united before, the one that made all this happen, the source, so to speak, in our minds, in our being, that allows all this to come out. Because his unity didn't change, it also means that our access to his unity didn't change. So when we go l'shoresh hamachshava, when we go to the beginning of our perception, before it goes into the olam hapirid, before it gets separated into many different ideas and concepts and desires and wants and needs and imagined ideas, we have the ability to unite, to be in unity. And when we're in unity, he can come with his unity and rest within us. What does that mean? We can exist an unconditional existence in that place of unity. And when we exist in unconditional existence, we open up our hearts to him. Then he can come in. And we speak about this on Friday night. Those who pay attention to the piece of Zohar, like Higavno, where it says, Rosa de Shabbos, I Shabbos, this Achdas berosa de Echad, where it unites into the secret of unity. Because through the Neshama Yetzira, a person's perception is deeper, and he has the ability to realize that everything he thought during the Sheshes Yemei HaMaseh is all hevel, it all goes with the wind. It means nothing on Shabbos, because we're not busy with those things on Shabbos. And therefore, when all those things become meaningless, the actual soul that's inside of you becomes meaningful. The unity becomes meaningful. Because from that place of unity is where you can get new life, you can get chayes, you can get connection. And this is inside of us all the time, that we understand that even though our body has so many different forces, so many different elements, different organs, everybody's doing a different function. And even in the brain, there's so many different parts. Each one is trying to take care of different things and making sure that everything is working together. But at the end of the day, there's a certain unity between all these pieces that make it function as a single whole. If that unity disappears, then all the pieces have no meaning. They have no ability to coexist. So the unified life that runs within our body is a mashal to the unified life that runs within the universe. And we all have a taste of it inside of us. We all have an olam katan, and in our olam katan we have everything, from the Ein Sof all the way down to the bottom of Asiya. And the same thing in our bodies, from the top of the Gulgolet that's encasing the brain, all the way down to the toes. So everything works with the same formula, everything works with the same system, the same frequency. And this is how we can integrate life, because the frequencies are related. When we find the right frequency within our hearts and within our minds to vibrate in accordance with the universe, then we unite with the universe. We make a yichud. We and the universe becomes one. The ultimate yichud of Shema Yisrael is that a person realizes that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's forces are so united, everything that he is so united, and the self that the person defines is so imagined, is so fictitious, that really there is nothing else besides HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Even him himself is nothing else besides HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So while he's observing himself act, while he's observing himself talk, while he's observing himself eat, he's observing HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Because this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world. This is how he created it. We didn't create ourselves. Somebody created us to be this way. So when I watch myself, it's no different than watching somebody else. Just like when I'm watching somebody else, I'm saying, oh, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this creature. Let me see how he created it. It's so beautiful. The same thing about ourselves. As you watch yourself go through your day, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's creature. It's not your creature. You're just in the driver's seat because he wants you to take care of this creature. He wants you to improve it. He wants you to enhance it. But it's not yours. It's not yours, meaning you didn't create it and you don't really know how it works. You have to respect that. We have to give it all the conditions that it needs so that it can prosper, just like we would for a plant or for an animal or for another human being. It has to get all the ingredients that it needs because that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it. It has nothing to do with being selfish or being self-indulgent or not caring about other people. A person's duty is to himself first. And that means that you have a duty to yourself to figure out how you function, to figure out what makes you better, to figure out how to improve your experience in this world. Because that's the biggest gift you can give to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Forget about yourself for a moment. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants this to work. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants these people to succeed. He wants them to grow. He wants them to develop. So when you're developing yourself, you're giving a gift to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he can have a more improved human being on this planet that can try and help the situation that's going on. And that's the main focus. That's the main reason why we need to read Krishma twice a day, so that we never forget. Whenever there's a new period coming, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sliced up time with days and nights so that we have the ability to control our time and we have the ability to take things in proportion, to take them piecemeal, one day at a time. Even as is, sometimes that's difficult. Sometimes you have to go down to an hour at a time or a minute at a time or a breath at a time. But Every time we go into a new cycle, every time we go into a new day, which is a new realization, or we go into a new night, which is a new lack of realization, a new darkness, a new feeling of, okay, whatever I knew till now is not helping me, I need something fresh. Every time this happens to you, you need to read Krishma again. You need to recognize that Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. There's a unity where all this is coming from. Yes, it's day and it's night. Yes, I feel like this and I feel like that, and there's this guy and that guy and the other guy and this situation and that situation. But at the end of the day, it's all one unity trying to express itself. It's all one. It's all Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. And until we get there, until the Krech may also need a drink, so what do we do till then? We say, Baruch Shem Kvod Machis Elam Vod. Bakol Shemoy. I don't necessarily have access to the unity, but I know that even while I'm not experiencing the unity, He's still experiencing the unity, and that's good enough for me. I don't need to understand it. Before I was born, His unity was doing fine, His universe was doing fine, and He was in charge of what was happening, and He had His plan. And after I die, that will continue. My awareness is not what causes anything to happen. My awareness is what goes along for the ride. My awareness is there in order to improve, to develop, to give insight, to enlighten, but it's not there to carry the load. It's not there to control. We can't control. And the Yichud is supposed to tell us to stop controlling life. The Yichud is supposed to remind us, because if we don't, and we try to control life, any type of control that we try to exert on our lives is a form of Avodah Zarah. Because control means that you're dictating to life. And it's not how it works. Life dictates to you. You don't dictate to life. You can improve. You have the opportunity. That's wonderful. But the moment you try to control a situation, you're now turning against your own heart. Your mind and your heart are going to start fighting. Why? Because your heart is grounded in reality. And your mind has the ability to imagine and remove itself from reality. As soon as the mind starts arguing with reality, tries to force reality to be the way the mind wants it, and it can't, the heart's the one that suffers. Because the heart's not getting chaim, it's not getting life from the moach. The moach is now busy saying that if this doesn't happen, my life is not worth living, so to speak, to a certain degree. And that's never the answer. Life is always worth living because HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us, so we live. And within our life, within our living, we want to know what would He like for us to do in order to improve that experience for ourselves and for others. But it's not about forcing, it's not about controlling. So when a person interacts with life in that way, it's a whole different game, it's a whole different dance. And the goal of that dance is that we should realize that everything that's happening here is a davar kodesh. It needs to be rescued. It needs to be rescued from the sheker of the olam hazeh. And the sheker of the olam hazeh is not the sheker of the gashmias. The gashmias is not the olam hazeh. The gashmias is just gashmias. The olam hazeh is how we interpret the gashmias. In the olam haba there will also be gashmias. But in the olam haba the gashmias will be interpreted differently. So olam hazeh is olam hasheker, not because of the gashmias. The gashmias is actually not sheker. The gashmias is true. The sheker is what we think it means. That's the olam hasheker. And the olam haba is when you understand what it means, you understand the truth, then you go into the olam haba. And I think we mentioned before, olam haba is the letters of olam ahava, a word of love. What is a world of love? A world of love means that every person, he takes joy in another person's pleasure. He takes joy in seeing other people feeling good. He takes joy in seeing other people eating. He takes joy in seeing other people relaxing, laughing. Why? Because that's where we come from. That's the midah of Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu saw a person, the first thing he wanted to see on that person is, how does he look when he eats? He's probably going to look better. Let's call him in, let's give him a meal. He didn't even start preaching before the guy ate. Because Avraham Avinu, Mirov Chazdoi, he derived pleasure from another person's pleasure. When we're all going to be wired that way, that we can derive pleasure from another person's pleasure, and we can derive joy from another person's joy, then guess what? There will be a lot more pleasure and a lot more joy going around. And that's part of the goal. That's how we're going to be able to dive into the Chokhmah is when we don't have to worry about our pleasure and our joy. We don't have to worry about what we need to survive, because that's already been guaranteed by society. We have to worry about understanding it and going deeper and being able to share wisdom with other people. So everybody's looking, how can he bring more joy to others? And when that's the motivation, then it becomes Kish Echad B'Leiv Echad. Then the unity starts, and eventually you get to the epitome of unity, where the collective consciousness of all of Klal Yisrael reveals itself and shows us what is the right path. How can we go further? How can we do even more? So the concept of Yichud is the Yisoid of Yiddishkeit, because this is the ultimate goal. This is where we have to arrive to. And Yichud means that you yourself are not out of it, like we said before. You yourself are part of the Yichud. You're observing a being, you're observing a body, you're observing a reality that is a part of a huge klal, a part of a global unit, that when it all comes together, it has the most power. Similarly to by an individual. And an individual, most of the problems that he encounters is that a lot of ruchos were created in him, a lot of thoughts, a lot of desires, a lot of phenomena, and these different phenomena don't get along with each other. So let's say from the age of 1 to 10, he was told that this is what you need to do and you should never do that. And then maybe as a teenager, he decided that no, it's just the opposite. This is what I need to do and the other I should never do. So now in his mind, in his experience, there are conflicting ruchos. They're conflicting ruchos. It's not even about the truth, it's about his experience. That in his mind, there's no unity, there's no single way, there's no single mahalach of life. So in the place of unity, everybody has space. If people are together, Chazal say, they can stand even on the point of a machat, on the point of a needle. And that point of the needle is the understanding of the unity. That brings everything together, that it's the point of a needle. It's just one point. You get that, you understand who you are, you understand what you're doing here, then everything you think becomes Torah. Like Reb Shem Tov says, if a person reads Krishma, Shachris v'Arvis, he was Yoitze, v'gisu b'yomam v'loyla. V'dover zeh, ose la'omre b'fnei ha'moretz, you're not allowed to say it in front of ha'moretz. So why? If it's true, you can say it. If it's not true, why are you saying it in the first place? And the answer is, it's only true if you understand what we're talking about. If you understand what the Yichud is, and you read Krishma, then your entire day, whatever happens to you, is going to be part of the Yichud, because you understand who created you. You understand the experience. You're observing from the proper place. So now, everything you're learning about yourself and about the world is part of Torah. But the Amoritz is going to say, oh, all I have to do is just say the psukim and I'm done. That's not what we mean. That's not how it works. So the real Yichud turns the whole world into a different experience. It turns life into a different experience. And then a person could get closer to the realization that it's really the same. It's the same one that's trying to manifest here. The tachlis of all the work that we do, all the davening and all the learning and all the mitzvahs, meaning that alone is the tachlis. The reason for the whole Torah is to be megala the yichud. So the only reason we have so much happening in the Torah is because at the time when Klal Yisrael needed to accept this yichud, they were not ready for it. If they would have been ready for the yichud, if they would have accepted the first luchos and they would have stayed at that, then the Torah wouldn't be so complicated to understand. We would be able to go to that point and we'd be able to perceive from there, which is going to happen after Mashiach comes, where it says, that everybody is going to be learning Torah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Nobody's going to need a teacher. The Mashiach is going to come to teach Torah to the Goyim. The Yidden are not going to need a teacher because they're just going to look inside and find the truth. Because once the Yichud is understood, then every experience, you know who you're working for, you know which side to take. But as long as the Yichud is not understood, then we have to talk about all the topics. We have to go through every different scenario we can think of. What do I do here? What do I do there? And if this happens, and if that happens, and up and down. Why? Because you're not learning the Yisoid, we're learning the pratim. And the pratim, they don't have a shir. Like it says, Arucha me'eretz mida, erechava miniyam. That the Torah is limitless, it's endless. Because the pratim don't have a shir. But the yisoid of the Torah is the yichud, and the yichud is a nekuda that when a person understands it properly, the whole Torah is now within him. It becomes terosoi, it becomes his Torah. Why? Because he's trying to manifest what the Torah is trying to manifest. Him and the Torah are the same side. Like it says by David HaMelech, Yefei Enayim, Sha'alocha Kamoisa B'chol Mokim. The David HaMelech was so attached to the pnimius of the Torah, to the essence of the Torah, that his heart was Einshtik Torah, and therefore was Alocha Kamoisa B'chol Mokim. If he feels this way, then this is how Hashem feels. Hashem is always in the same place that he is. He and Hashem share an intelligence. They share the intelligence of the Torah. They share how are we going to bring this madhouse into a yichud. And that was David HaMelech's avodah. It says, Yedecho chadois v'charitzois lirdois olami, that David HaMelech spilled a lot of blood because he was trying to bring Ashras Ashchina, was trying to build the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore his entire goal was to be mechala the koitzim of the Kerem Hashem, to be mechala the thorns from HaKadosh Baruch Hu's vineyard. And therefore he was busy with killing the nations, and he did a fine job, because his son, who became king at the age of 12, had the most peaceful reign that Klal Yisrael ever saw. It's called Sehare Bashlemisa, that the moon was complete, because at the time of Shlomo HaMelech, Mirov Chochmosoi, and Mirov that David HaMelech took care of what needed to be taken care of, he was able to go through his entire kingdom without any war. It was all Chochmah, it was all trying to bring together Klal Yisrael and to figure out all the different koiches in the universe and how they work, so that they don't get in each other's way, so that he can finalize the Gula Shleima. But the world wasn't ready, and different things had to happen. The kingdom got split into two, and the rest is history, as they say. But the goal of David HaMelech, the goal of Shlomo HaMelech was to unite the world, so that there is complete yichud, so that people realize that we're not fighting for our existence here. All our fighting is actually against our existence. Our fighting ruins our existence. It doesn't help our existence. Only peace can help our existence. But as long as there are people who can't realize it, they don't have the capacity in their DNA to realize it, so they need to be exterminated. But the goal is not the extermination. The goal is the unity that comes. And today is a different time. Today is a time where the world is a more peaceful place. We can't know HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plans, and in the Nevi'im there's a lot of retribution that's supposed to happen before the Mashiach comes, and we can't know if it happened already, or it will happen, and how it will happen, and what will happen. But we always need to remember that the point of it all is not the chaos. The point of it all is the peace, the unity. That's the only thing we need to hold on to. Whatever is going to happen on its way doesn't change the destiny. The destiny is always the same. The destiny is the realization that the world was created on purpose, the way that it needs to be. And when we all get along with the program, it's going to be extremely enjoyable. Not only spiritually, but even physically. And in all the different ways that we can imagine, and even in many, many different ways that we can't imagine, because this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's kindness we're talking about. Just like in complexity, we can't keep up with him. We can't understand the complexity that he creates and how it all integrates into one and how it all works together. The same way we can't understand the vastness of the joy, the vastness of the relaxation, the vastness of the wisdom that he can give to us if we become the proper vessels, if we become the people who are ready to receive what it is that he's trying to give. And he desperately wants to give. Chazal say, that even more that the baby wants to suckle, the mother wants to feed. It's pleasurable to her, and it's desired. As she's carrying around the milk, it becomes painful after a while if the baby doesn't eat. So the same thing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has so much shefa to give, and when we don't take his shefa, it aggravates him. He wants to be kind, he wants to be good, he wants to be able to share with us. But in order for that to happen, we need to create a clay kibble. We need to create a vessel that can contain light. And what does a vessel need in order to contain light? It needs to get rid of all these different dinim, all the cheshbonis, and all the arguments, and all the anger, and all the different negative energies inside of us. Because like we said before, the power of the spirit is when it's united. And as long as there's negativity in there, as long as the person's resisting whatever it is that's going on around him, there's no unity. Even if you bring in some good, now the good and the bad are fighting with each other. There's no peace, there's no calm. So only when we clear ourselves and we cleanse ourselves from all these different negative forces and negative energies, can we start being a real kli for a powerful, forceful, spiritual awakening, which is waiting to happen. In fact, all the pain that we feel, all the emotional pain, all the spiritual pain, is simply our spirit saying to us, I want to wake up. That's all it's saying. I want to be awake, I want to be aware, I want to be conscious. And the things that are not letting it wake up, the things that are not letting it become conscious because they're too painful and the spirit feels it's not ready to face those realities, they're keeping it asleep. It doesn't have a choice. It's like it's in the middle of a surgery. You know, you can't wake it up now. It's going to be too painful. You got to wait until it heals a little bit and then we can wake him up. So the spirit, in the meantime, is in pain. It's saying, I don't feel myself. I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm doing here. And all that is because it's asking and begging that it wants to be alive. It wants to be awake. It wants to be itself. It wants to know what that means to be itself. And that's a long journey. It's a long journey. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, B'Rov Rachmav, he gives us different cycles. So we don't feel the pain continuously. One day we're feeling nicely. The other day we're feeling very good. And the other day maybe not so good, because there's different parts of us, different portions. Some of them we've completed better, some of them we've completed worse. Some of them our parents were good at and they taught us how to deal with. Some of them our parents didn't even have it. It was non-existent. We never even knew it existed until we became older and it started hurting us. So all these different parts of us, they all want to be alive. They all want to coexist. They all want to have their portion. They want to have their share. And the avodah of the das, the avodah of the driver of this boat, of the consciousness, of the awareness, is to allow for everybody his portion, to allow for every force, for every part of your body to get what it deserves. Just like we know on the physical side that we need to allow ourselves time to sleep, and we need to feed our bodies, and we need to take care of different of the basic needs of the body. The same thing goes for the spiritual side of us. The only problem there is that we don't know. We don't know what it means to feed all the different spiritual aspects of our being. We don't know what it means to give them rest. Sometimes we have stress. We can have continuous stress for a few weeks. We know it's not good for us. There are parts of us that are not functioning. There are parts of our brain that can't function when we're under stress. But if we have a diet of only stress for a few weeks, some portions of us are going to start crying because they're not getting what they need. They're not alive. They don't feel like they got their share. It's not that different than a person being so busy in some kind of a deal or in some kind of an event that he forgets to eat. So eventually his body is going to cry. It's going to ask for its portion. Because that's how HaKadosh Baruch Hu set everything up. That everything has its time, everything has its needs, everything has its place, everything has its balance. Life is not a chore that you can accomplish. Life is a rhythm. Or life is a dance. You have to learn how to dance with it. You have to go up when it goes up, and you have to go down when it goes down. It's not something that you say, oh, I figured it out, now I'm done. It's not how life works. It's a continuous journey to discover. And you discover, the more you discover, the more you can find peace. And the more you find peace, the more you can discover. And it goes deeper and deeper like that. And that's how you get to the yichud. So it says the tachlis of all the avodas is to get to this yichud. So that the whole world will recognize this yichud. That's why we have all the mitzvahs, and that's why we have all the Torah, and that's why we do everything that we do. That it should be clear within each nivra, within each creature, the power of the Creator. That he's the koich havaya that's mispashet without an end. So it says just like a person in time. We know that a person doesn't exist all the time. He exists for a little portion of the time. The same way, a person's machshava, a person's consciousness, is not all of consciousness, it's a piece of consciousness. So everything a person is a piece of the big. So just like in space, he takes up a tiny dot in space, he takes up a tiny dot in time, and he takes up a tiny dot in consciousness. But his job is so that area of consciousness that he is in charge of, that area of consciousness that's driving him, needs to be clean, needs to be pure, and needs to be ready to receive, needs to be ready to be enlightened. Because as long as the person's holding on to beliefs and holding on to ideas that are not allowing that light in, the person cannot find peace, he can't find himself. וזה הציב קרישמה בכל בוקר וערב, שבכל הסחול גבול, נפרד מהגבולים שבר שייך לבעלי הגבול, נעיד ונקר, כי באמס הוויה אחד. This is like we said before, that every time there is a new gvul, every time you're going into new territory, you remind yourself of the yichud so that you don't chas v'shalom forget, because this is an opportunity for you. It's like you're going on a trip, you're going somewhere, and you arrive and you take a picture. You want to take something with you, right? So over here, in order to be koine this day, in order to be koine this feeling, in order to be koine this experience, how are you going to be koine it so that it's yours? You're going to bring it back to the yichud. And then it becomes true Reb Tzodok. Then it becomes part of you. Otherwise, it's just another experience that didn't integrate into the unity. So you bring in the avaya, שהוא הבלתי בעל גבול, והוא מייחד בתכלס היחיד, שאין שם פירט חס ושלום. There cannot be anything separate from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There cannot be anything in this world that is really your enemy. If it looks like your enemy, it's either because you didn't understand it, or because he didn't understand it. But in reality, we have no enemies, none of us. Not in this world and not in any other world. All the enemies that we have, that we think we have, or that we might really have, that might cause us pain, is because of how we perceive reality, how we set ourselves up in relation to that thing. So if you get into a fight with something, now you have an enemy, but he's not your enemy. It's like a person choosing a wall and running into it. And it says it hurts. Well, a wall's not your enemy, but if you're going to run into it, it'll hurt. So the same thing in the spiritual reality. There's no malach, there's nobody in this world, there's nobody in reality that wants to hurt you. The Satan doesn't even really exist in that sense. The Satan, the only ability for the Satan to come out is because of our arrogance. So the Satan is a name for our arrogance, essentially. Arrogance. Arrogance meaning our stupidity, our lack of understanding. So we call that Satan. Why? Because that part of us that doesn't understand will get in the way of the part of us that does understand. So we have an understanding and we want to manifest, we want to create. Now comes our lack of understanding or our misunderstanding, and it doesn't allow us to manifest. So now that became our Satan. So the same way the Satan everywhere, the Satan that creates wars, the Satan that creates people arguing with each other, or problems with shalom bias, all these different things, they're not your enemy, they don't really exist. They come into existence by people misunderstanding the reality, and then they create negative, they create evil. So they become like a stick in the hand of the Satan. But who's driving that? What's driving that is arrogance. What's driving that is stupidity. It's a lack of understanding of what it really means to be alive. It's a lack of respect for what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, and then eventually that can cause pain. That can cause people to feel like they're in a hostile situation, like something is wrong. But there's nothing really wrong. There's nobody there that's actually driving a problem other than us, other than our das, our individual das, our collective das, the way that we live life. That causes if we should have a solid, pain-free experience, or if we lack understanding, if we lack knowledge, if we lack wisdom, then that causes a difficult experience, a turbulent experience. But all of it eventually leads to the yichud that is a pain-free experience. And with that tachlis, we're going to be mechaper on the whole talich. We're going to be mechaper on whatever happened before, and that's why we celebrate Shabbos every week. Because Shabbos, we're creating the Yom Shekileh Shabbos, the day that comes after. The day that comes, the 1,000 years that comes after the 6,000 years of confusion, there's 1,000 years of rest. The Pasuk calls it, the day that HaKadosh Baruch Hu leaves your sadness and your anger behind. Because these are the two main forces that destroy our lives. Our sadness and our anger. Those are the times when we do most of the damage to our own situation, to the people we love, and to ourselves. So Shabbos is a day where HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you rest from your sadness and from your anger. And the Yom Shekilah Shabbos is a day when we all have rest, and therefore the Satan doesn't have with who to come out into this world. And that's why the Cholchatas Amcha Beis Yisrael, they're going to go b'mukam asher lo yizachru v'lo yipagdu v'lo ya'ale alev lo'olam. You're never going to think about them. Why? Because there won't be who should remind you. You won't be stupid enough to think about them. You won't let yourself go there. So, and that's going to be when Mashiach will come, and we'll be able to eliminate all evil. So it says, a person has to be at a really high level in order to be able to ascertain where his negativity is coming from. So in the beginning, it's just a matter of becoming aware and realizing what's happening in your mind. And sometimes the easiest way to catch yourself is to see a negative action. You said something you shouldn't have said to somebody or whatever. So let's go back. Let's do some rewind and see, how did I get myself into that predicament? What was I thinking? What led up to it? And then slowly, as you become more and more aware, and as the respect for what HaKadosh Baruch Hu created inside of you grows, so you're going to start feeling that it's wrong to do that to yourself. Why are you hurting this poor guy's life? And then eventually, if a person goes in that direction, then the things that he did to himself that were wrong earlier in life are going to start coming up to him. Because now he has das. Das means that he has the ability to differentiate between good and evil. And because he has the ability to differentiate, the different traumas are going to start coming to him for a tikkun. Saying, you remember 20 years ago? Remember what happened? You remember how that tekufa felt? You remember the words you were telling yourself while it was happening? You know that made me feel? So all that starts coming up because this is medakeh. This depresses the life force inside of us when we do that. So now it wants to live. It's going to start asking you questions like, how can you do this? How can you do that? Only because your das is now available. Your das is conscious and aware. So now he has somebody to talk to, so he'll talk. Eventually, a person goes through all of that. He goes through all his traumas. If there's still stuff left, so then you start realizing that the way that people understand life, the way that we are living life is not suitable to you. So why were you put into such a situation? If it's not suitable for your neshama to be in this environment, how can HaKadosh Baruch Hu put you there? And the answer is because in previous Gilgulim, you caused yourself to get to this level, and now you're put between people at your level so that you can grow out of there. So your circumstances around you, they have to do with your Gilgulim. But your actual trauma inside, they have more to do with what happened in this world since you were born. So that's a way to differentiate between the two. Because there's a lot of suffering that comes to us from the outside. We have no choice about it. There's nothing we can do. We're a young child. So you can't really blame the child for being born into a specific family. That has to come from elsewhere. But once the child is in there and his mind starts getting contaminated, right? All kinds of toxic statements going in there. What's wrong with you? What are you doing? All these different things, and it starts catching. It starts, okay, what is wrong with me? So then now he's creating new trauma. That's already his. The fact that he said what's wrong with you, that maybe had to do with the previous Gilgal, but the fact that you accepted it, that's now. So that's the avodah. So that's something we have to clear out, because you're never going to find God if you think there's something wrong with you. He doesn't work like that. You can be broken about not knowing the truth. You can cry. You can say, how come that I want to do the right thing and I can't? That's fine. That's a legitimate question. You come to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and you say, how can you create me so wrong? Who said there's something wrong? You don't even know what we're handling with yet. Take a step back. We need derech eretz for what's happening here. You can't just jump in and say, I already understood now. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, do this and that and the other for me. We don't understand. We don't even know what's good and what's bad most of the time. We don't have the sensitivity. So we just have to create kindness, create an environment of kindness, because that's where the nefesh can grow, that's where the nefesh can become aware, that's where sensitivity can live. And today we try to desensitize everybody. But desensitizing is a type of death. An alive person is extremely sensitive. The more sensitive, the more alive. And not only insensitive to himself, sensitive to everybody. But what happens, if it causes too much pain, then you say, I'd rather not be alive than suffer this pain. You know, so the spirit goes into hiding. It goes into its kunchia, as they call it in Hebrew. It just goes. It doesn't want to experience whatever it is that's available to experience. So it hides from that. But what we try to do in order to gain access to the spiritual is wake up that spirit again. And therefore we have to create an extremely loving and friendly environment for that spirit, so that it wants to, live, so that it wants to wake up, so that it wants to understand. And it's not pashut, because when it wakes up, it does start realizing realities that are very painful that it wasn't really aware of in the past. Reality is more painful than we think it is. And that's because we are much more alive than we think it is, than we think we are. And if we become fully alive, then suddenly we realize how screwed up everything really is. It makes no sense. Like, how do people do this? Why? What's going on over here? People are yelling and screaming at each other. Everybody's ripping into each other. For a few dollars, we give everything away like that. But that's because we're all asleep. There's nobody home. Why? Because already at an early age, we noticed that it's way too painful to be home. So we go on vacation. We just disregard. Let life happen, and then whatever, we'll figure it out after. But this is the time, this is the opportunity. So even if it's painful, you want to be awake, you want to have your focus in the right direction, so that the little bit that we do while we're here is meaningful, helps us really grow.